What's up everyone, it's Sprometheus, and today, once again, we are talking about pour-overs, but this time I'm not going to go into some kind of crazy unique brewing method or go into something very detailed or super specific. I'm going to go kind of back to the basics. Recently I reminded myself that there are always new people starting in coffee, and even those of us who are coffee professionals or self-proclaimed coffee nerds can always use a refresher, and who knows, maybe in this video covering some basic stuff you might even learn something or remember something you may have forgot. So as I picked out these 3 tips, I skipped over things like a scale and a good grinder because you can find that information pretty much anywhere, but I picked out these for very specific reasons, and those are simplicity, because they can be done with little to no investment in gear, their versatility, because you can use them on essentially any pour-over dripper, and lastly their overall benefit of the quality and flavor of the cup produced. Also, each of these 3 tips is focused on a different aspect of the brewing experience, which also will help deepen your knowledge about brewing coffee in general. The first tip is focused on agitation to produce a deeper, more balanced flavor in your cup. The second, a better understanding of how to look at brew time. And finally, the best practices in dialing in your pour-over brew. But first, a quick word from this video's sponsor, Standart Magazine. Nothing goes together quite like a cup of coffee and some quality reading, and Standart Magazine fits into that pocket of happiness perfectly. Each issue is like a snapshot of coffee culture at that moment in time, with topics ranging from those in the forefront to those on the margins, and not to mention some eye-catching design and photography. An included sample of coffee from some of the best roasters in the world helps bring the experience full circle. So hit that Standart link in the description or head to standartmag.com/Sprometheus to support an independent coffee magazine, the channel, and treat yourself to a year subscription of copy and coffee delivered to your doorstep pretty much anywhere in the world. Early on in my brewing experience, I felt and kind of was taught that agitating the coffee at all during the brewing process, outside of just the way the water moves the coffee around in the slurry, is kind of a no-no. But over time, after learning and looking things up, I realized that necessarily isn't the case. The process of agitation can take on many forms, and however you do it, it's definitely worth getting done. It can be a quick swirl of the entire coffee dripper, a couple swipes back and forth with a spoon, or even a full spin with a chopstick. In my opinion, agitation makes the most difference on the flavor of your cup of coffee when utilized at the beginning and at the end of your brew cycle. Once you've done your first pour of water, also known as the bloom, taking a short break to agitate the coffee bed will more evenly expose your coffee grinds to the hot water, which essentially means that no coffee is left untouched by water, which is the solvent using to pull out the flavor, and the flavor is what we want in our cup. So in the end, it's a win. And finally, just after your last bit of brew water has been added, another quick swirl or stir can ensure that the bed of coffee beneath the water is flat, which aids in an even flow of water through the coffee bed. So that even flow of water through the bed creates an even extraction of the coffee, and in the end, in the cup, that creates balance. You can also visually see if the agitation was effective by looking at the bed after all the water has made its way through. You can see the difference between an agitated and a non-agitated bed. So in the end, don't be afraid to get in there and literally stir things up a bit. But also, don't overdo it, and make sure whatever method you choose, you can do it consistently so you can recreate it on whatever brew you want in the future. Brew time is one of those topics that is pretty dense, and there are a lot of factors at play. Always top of mind in this topic is grind size, but below the surface there are many other factors like pouring pace and the filter being used. But what isn't talked about all that often is that brew time is more of a recommendation than a hard rule, and most recipes will come with some kind of time frame they want you to land in. Yet what most recipes don't take into account is that all-important personal factor when it comes to brewing coffee, and that's your preference. And most coffees will provide different flavor notes at different brew times. For example, this coffee presents milk chocolate notes at 3 minutes, dark chocolate at 3:30, and Baker's at just over 4, on top of various other flavors throughout. Of course, at least in my opinion, there's such a thing as too long and too short of a brew, but there's a lot of space in that middle ground for you to explore, and I highly recommend you do it, so take that very specific time frame for that recipe with a grain of salt. Last but not least, one thing that makes sense to me now, but I didn't even really realize it as a novice brewer, was when dialing in a coffee, only make changes to one variable at a time. And this methodical approach to dialing in has 2 major benefits. The first reason is, if you make a grind change, use a little hotter water, and brew a bit longer, it's impossible to know what variable made what difference in that final outcome, Also, it helps you better understand the principles of coffee brewing, as well as understanding how each variable changes the outcome in the final cup. This knowledge is something you can take with you as you delve into more coffees and help you dial in more quickly and more confidently. So I'm pretty sure had I known some of these tips early on in my coffee brewing days, I would have made many more tasty cups along the way, but what can you say? Live and learn. In the end, as you get more confident with your coffee brewing techniques, I highly recommend branching out into other coffee drippers, as well as other recipes that are out there. I've even got one myself for my personal favorite dripper, the V60. Anyway, that is it for me this week. Let me know your thoughts on the video, if you found it helpful, and if you have any brewing tips you want to share with the class, definitely leave those in the comment section down below. And of course, as always, I'll see y'all next week. And of course, a big thank you to my April Patreons, Ads, Jacob P, David W, Christopher Squeegee Rowe, Brian, Lisa, Andre, Sean Noel, Spookus, Mika, Samantha, Claire, Bound Coffee, Stephen, James K, Josh Horrison, Corey C, Curry, Jeff Roth, Joey N, Thomas B, UK Espresso, Tim, Jason C, Jerry, Matt, Ninja Warrior Coffee, Home Barista Coach, Counseling Memes, Testing 123, Zachary V, Tyler F, Robert Underdunk, Jeffrey R, BJK Cafe, Chris M, Daniel P, Mike B, Brian M, Brandon B, Tyler M, Sebastian, Matthew C, JRC, Absolute, Stephen G, Alex T, Offensive, Jose Lauren, and Keefe, and of course a big thank you to the barista and barback tiers. If you want any information on my Patreon, there's a link in the description and in the upper right hand corner right now. And of course, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Follow my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, my coffee at littlegiant.coffee, and as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.